So I said, I jumped at the chance because he said, but I will teach you how to bush fly in the mountains.
Oh.
In and out of these big canyons, high altitude, landing on top of the mountains, landing on steep slopes, landing in places you'd never think about landing in normal operation.
Welcome to the Coffee and a Hanger podcast. My guest today is Ron Hayes. Ron is one of the most, if not the most qualified person alive to talk about bush flying. At 95, he's been flying in Alaska for nearly 70 years. He's one of few people alive who guided polar bear hunting in the Arctic. Running from Russian military, circling a giant cottonwood tree for hours in low visibility conditions, or running out of fuel over the Bering Sea at night. Ron has some amazing stories and some amazing knowledge to share with us. I'm proud to be sharing this conversation with you. Enjoy. At what point did you get into guiding and flying commercially and things like that?
Guiding, 61, I got into it pretty heavy. In 58, the first guiding hunt, and that was in the Wrangell Mountains. A guy named Lee Holland, who was a great bush pilot, not one of the real old ones, but my age, he's dead now, was my mentor in the mountain flying business. I hung around Lake Hood in Anchorage because I had an airplane. And I always hung around over at Alaska Float Plane Service that belonged to Lee Holland at one time. And Lee was a pretty nice guy, and you could visit with him. I became friends with Lee. And I kept bugging him to go to the Wrangell Mountains and fall sheep hunting and moose and caribou and grizzly bear hunting and work for him. With my own airplane. Now, at this point, I had a Super Cub in my life. I owned a Super Cub, and that was 1958. And it was a 1959 or 58 Super Cub. And so we went up there. He finally said, yeah, I'll take you up. I'm not going to pay you anything. You can just earn what hunters give you tips. So I said, I jumped at the chance because he said, but I will teach you how to bush fly in the mountains. In and out of these big canyons, high altitude, landing on top of the mountains, landing on steep slopes, landing in places you'd never think about landing in normal operation. He taught me all of that, and he taught me well. And of course, like any other beginner, I became his competitor. I went into business for myself. But I remained friends with Lee for a long time. And so he's my mentor of what I learned about mountain flying. And he taught me well. I remember hundreds of places we landed in the Wrangell Mountains that just impossible places. Bad approaches, big cliffs, coming straight, runway up on top of a little plateau and a 800 or 900 foot cliff right at the final approach. Things like that freak you out.
How do you approach something like that?
Well, you just take your time. Lee, way he taught me in the very beginning was he'd pick a place where to go around. When you ain't got to go around, you can't do this. He'd pick a place and he'd make me make the approach and then go. Just keep doing them. And he'd stay with me. He'd be on the ground coaching me on the radio. And he'd say, slow her down, get that thing on the stall. And touch that rock. He'd put a rock out there by the runway. I want you to touch that ground, that rock. Okay, Lee. It was very difficult for me. I mean, you're a greenhorn, you're scared, and you're nervous. Everything is going against you, but you learn. I mean, different kinds of runways. He would do that on runways I wouldn't get in trouble on. Like ones you can't go around on, the big hill there or something. You got to land. We got to where we could land on those. I did. Lee would show me. Said, now you're not going around on this one.
You got to get it right.
You got to touch it down. He'd always land first. For the first week or two that I flew with him, I'd follow him everywhere he went. And he'd say, now here's the way I want you to do this. Now you go way out there and make a long approach, make a long final. He said, I want you to get set up a long ways out. And that's the way he did it every time. He taught me well.
Man.
And of course, I lived through a lot of bad experiences, so I must have learned something.
If you had to kind of tell me some of the highlights of what Lee taught you, in those first couple weeks, what were some of the things you learned? Do you remember?
How to slow an airplane down. They teach you that, when you learn, but yeah, you're flying right above the runway. Now, up there, you got bad terrain under you. You don't let it stall, but you got to get it down to a stall. If you can't get an airplane down to a stall, you can't land on a spot. If you drive an airplane in at full flying speed, I don't mean full flying speed, but normal landing speed and touchdown, you're not going to get stopped. You're going to run off the end of that 400-foot runway. It's not going to stop.
Yeah.
You got to be stalled.
And so how do you do that?
Just fly, slow fly. Learn how to fly an airplane that's falling out from under you constantly. And it's very difficult when you're heavy. It's a different world when you start loading them up and overgrossing them.
Yeah.
That's when it gets very dangerous. Got to be real careful. And of course, your speed's going to be faster. You can't expect to land at 47 miles an hour grossed out like you can empty. And I know some of these Super Cubs today are down to 30s, in the 30s stall. We didn't have them then.
What were they
They
stalling?
weren't available.
What were they stalling at?
We were actually falling out of the air at 40.
That's pretty crazy.
Yeah. A lot of people brag around the hangar about, mine's down to 35. Maybe it is today.
28.
The new
The high
improvement.
people go in the 20s.
Yeah.
But
Well,
it's like,
I think there is. I think they've got them down pretty damn slow.
it's crazy.
now. I've seen some on the short field landing stuff. It's very slow. You can tell they're slow.
Yeah. Well,
I think people have learned how to land shorter than they used to. Let me tell you, I think that's a select grade of people. That isn't the average flyer up there on them short field landings contests that's winning it.
yeah.
Those guys are good bush pilots. I mean, I don't know how much common sense they got about where to land and when to go and that sort of stuff, but they're damn good airplane drivers. And better than I was. We had small tires, a lot smaller, 29s by 11 by 4, and the brakes were terrible, 4-inch brakes.
Yeah.
And we didn't have bore props. And of course, that was a revolution to have that prop. Before then, Piper made the props. I mean, Piper sold the plane with the prop on it, and I think it was McCauley made the prop, but it wasn't a real good bush plane prop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that changed the game when he came and when he developed that prop. That changed the game when he developed the prop. Roger.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That was. They're still using them.
Yeah.
Pretty hard to beat them, actually. I mean, there's props out there that probably do beat them, but they're a problem. They got some kind of problem.
Yeah.
That bore prop doesn't have too many problems. You got a 42 pitch, that's pretty good for bush flying. And you still got a decent speed somewhere between 80 and 90.
What did you have to do back then? What were the requirements to getting a license?
About the same as they are now.
Was it?
Now, it may be a little tougher. You had to do spins in those days. That was required. And complete stall with a spin, at least a turn. I can recall that vividly, yeah. But the paperwork was about the same. It was all about the same.
What kind of airplane?
The only difference is when I got my instrument rating. Now, this is something I'm going to talk about. Nobody much younger than me is going to even know about.
Okay.
It's called a low frequency range leg. And in the old days, the old pilots, the real bush pilots in America or in Alaska, navigated on what we call the low frequency range leg. It's a signal you hear on the radio that you tune the frequency, hear the signal. One side of a beam is an N, dot and a dash. Or I may have it backwards now. Forgive me if I do.
Okay.
The other side's an a dash and a dot. When you're on the beam, both of those dash and dots, the Morse code, makes a steady tone. That's how you fly instruments in the old days. None of these dials at ADF,
So you know, you can just know by
no VOR, forget that,
Right.
hasn't even been thought of yet. And of course, no Lorana, no GPS. That's way out in front. So the range leg comes usually there's 4 of them off each station. Every town of any significance to have a range leg. Anchorage had one. The last one decommissioned in Alaska was McGrath, Alaska, or Farewell Lake, one of the two. Those range legs beam, they stay right on the same place. They're beamed, a radio frequency beam goes right out this way, one over here, one here, and your map shows that beam and the coordinates of it. And you got to get on them beams to get to that station to land, and you make an instrument approach with that beam. Nothing to look at. Go out and make procedure turn, come back and land on that beam. Now that's difficult. I took my instrument rating by the low frequency range leg was one of the requirements. And it was difficult. It's difficult. But I did it. And we flew a lot by it in those days. That was it. That's all we had.
How many stations were in Alaska?
I don't know, but just about every town of any significance had one.
So like Anchorage, Fairbanks,
Oh,
Kenai,
yeah.
or
And
Homer.
smaller towns, McGrath had one. Any place that might be an airway. Like if you want to go from here to Nome, for instance, that would be an important airway. You'd have a range leg here, one in McGrath, one maybe in Galena. Galena didn't even exist then. That's later. Maybe one somewhere up on the Yukon, and maybe one in Nome, of course, and another one in Kotzebue. The same way going south, you'd have a low-frequency range leg, King Salmon, Port Moller, Port Hayden, somewhere, and then Coal Bay, and out that way. And that's the way you flew. That was the airways.
That's crazy.
The range leg. Now, those old pilots had to do that.
Yeah.
And we've really got a cinch now. I mean, with GPS. I mean,
Shoot.
you'd almost have to be blind not to be able to do it with a GPS. Yeah, it was kind of interesting. But we've came a long ways. Now, every generation can say, well, you should have seen how I had to do it when I learned it. They can all say that.
Yeah, I mean, if you go
I
back...
used to walk 2 miles to get to school every day, that sort of thing. That's what I heard when I was a kid.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's the old bush pilot, the guy that really had the tough time flying here. No maps. They made their own maps. Even the guys like Bob Reeve and Mudhole Smith and Don Sheldon and some of those guys that are kind of old bush pilots, they ain't really the old bush pilots. The old bush pilots had these stupid, terrible airplanes that terrible conditions, terrible maps, and same old terrible weather that you run into today. They had that to contend with. And nobody to help them.
Yeah.
No help. You go down out there,
You're walking back.
you're walking out, or you had a friend with a dog sled or something. You're not going to get no help from
100%.
Coast Guard or the CAP or anybody. They weren't around.
So what airplane did you learn in?
A Aeronica 7AC.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a wooden bar, wing. Pretty good airplane. I used to do stalls and spins and snap rolls and everything with the crazy thing. We were kind of crazy in some of the stuff we did. I had a friend who was learning to fly at the same time I was. And he had a personal airplane. It's called a Mooney. It's made by Mooney, a Mini Mite. It was one-person airplane. And you had to learn to fly it. Just, you had to learn to fly somewhere else, in tandem if you had an instructor. But once you got in that, you were on your own. And him and I used to grow up together. And of course, he was a lot faster with that plane than my champ.
Mm-hmm.
But we used to dogfight, do crazy things together. And we were kids, you know, and pretty brave, but do some crazy things once in a while. We'd go up with that champ 10,000 feet, and it'd take forever to get up there. I mean,
yeah.
Then we'd spin it for like down to 6,000. And then we used to do spins and come out on a compass heading. That instructor made us do that. Okay, I want you to do 3 spins and come out on 360. You know, it wasn't real precise, but it certainly taught you how to fly an airplane.
What were some of the things you and your buddy did? You were saying you did crazy.
We were dogfighting, trying to outmaneuver each other. I mean, it was foolishness.
Yeah.
But we were young. Yeah, it was strictly foolishness. It was stuff you wouldn't have to do to learn to fly, but we were challenging each other more or less. Yeah. He was a faster airplane, but it seemed to me like I outturned him, but I'm not sure of it today. I don't know what all we did, but we were on each other's tail trying to get away from each other.
Jeez.
It was fun for a while. And I used to take that old champ someplace. One time I was at home, or while we were home, it was a time period when we were paving the home airport. I was a mechanic. I flew my airplane down there from Anchorage. I lived in Anchorage. And so I wanted to go fishing and hunting and a lot with the plane. And I had floats on it. So I landed on that lake there at Homer. I forgot the name of the lake now, but it's right by the airport.
Yep.
And I went up into Fox River Valley and landed in a little river. It might have been called the Fox River. I can't recall. But this old champ, you had to prop it. So I was out hunting something. I think I was trying to find a black bear up there. I'd seen one, and I was hunting around, and I come back to the airplane, and you had to prop it to start it. So I pushed this airplane out, and river ain't really that swift. It was, later in life, landed on some very swift, crooked rivers, so I knew this river wasn't swift, if you'd call it real swift, but if you push out in it, it's going to start going like that down the river. So, of course, you kind of expect the plane to start. You pop her once to start, you jump in and then wait, get on the rudders and go. Taxi him where you want. Damn plane wouldn't start. Probably just my fault for my inexperience. I hadn't had it very long. Here I go, drifting down the river, round and around, at the mercy of the current.
You mean the plane's spinning?
Yeah, and I'm standing on the float trying to get it started.
Right.
Yet.
Yeah.
I finally did get it started, but not before we hit a tree with one wing. Just ripped the hell out of the fabric on one wing, but it didn't didn't break the strut or nothing. Right. But I finally got out of there, uneventful. That was one of my first go-arounds with landing on rivers.
Got to learn it somehow.
Yeah.
What would you have done differently now?
I'd have started it before I untied it.
That's what I was going to ask you, if that was... So.
But we just thought, well, just jump on her and give her one twist and she's going.
Yeah.
That's generally the way it happened.
Yeah.
But it didn't that particular time. Once you crank it once and it don't start, you may have some gas sucked in there you don't want sucked into that carburetor.
Yeah, and you might be throwing it a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when did you get into polar bear hunting?
1958 with Lee Holland, that very winter that I went to the Wrangles.
Really?
Boy, you talk about a greenhorn on the ice pack. I'd never seen the ice pack before. That was pretty interesting. So we take off from Anchorage, heading for Point Hope, Alaska. That's where we were going to base out of.
Where is
Lee
that?
knew Eskimo family there pretty well.
Where is Point Hope?
170 miles north of Kotzebue.
Okay.
You know where Kotzebue is? Most northern most northwest town in America.
Okay.
And it's pretty, and when I went there, it was 215 people lived there. A small village. And no hotel, no restaurant, no gas, no nothing. A native store with very few things except pilot bread. There was lots of pilot bread.
I was just thinking about pilot bread the other day. I was like, man, no one likes it. No one really likes it.
It's the worst stuff you can eat, but a lot of people lived on it for a while. It was light, put in emergency gear.
How did you get?
We landed in Point Hope. About half the village turned out. This one family knew Lee real well. Amos Lane, he was a very prominent citizen in that town. He was a whaling captain, a very ambitious man, and very knowledgeable about everything, mechanical-wise and fixing things, and a good hunter. And in those days, people hunted. If you didn't hunt, you didn't eat.
Right.
I mean, they actually ate what they killed.
Yeah.
And it was a tough life for them. The nearest water was a lake. As I recall, it was a couple miles away. That's what we got the ice out of and put it in an oil drum. I know we used an oil drum. I don't know what they used in the old days, older than those days. Some kind of container, but you melt that ice and that's your water. Not very hygienic and not real clean. And it was a tough life. So you stay with some native family. We rented a little place from Amos Lane. He had two little houses. He had a bigger house, but he had one he could rent us. And we lived there and kind of slept in bunk beds. And there's a guy named Alan Rock and his wife. And he's kind of a famous whale captain too. Alan Rock, nice guy, good hunter. He had what they called a home-style restaurant. It was just in his house. And he'd fix us meals, and mostly, carbohydrates. There was hardly anything fresh, or there wasn't nothing fresh. You didn't eat really well. Our customers probably didn't appreciate it too much, but they were polar bear hunting. That's what they had to do in those days.
How did you get fuel out there? How did you get fuel?
Well, we had a pretty unusual deal. Normally, you have to haul it from Contribute. That's the closest fuel by air. But what we discovered while we were wolf hunting one day, Lee and I, or Lee mostly, I just followed Lee around at that point in my life, just for safety, mostly. We found an Army cache where the Army had been up there on maneuvers, and there was a combat gas back there. Hundreds of barrels of it, not even open. It was like 3 or 4 years old, or more, maybe 8 years old. I can't remember the date, but it was old. Oh, everybody said, oh, you can't use that, that'll ruin your engine. We used that gas and nothing else. It was abandoned. They just left it.
What a treasure.
And we'd have to go back and get it, of course. It was about 50 miles to go back into the mountains to get it. We used that gas the whole polar bear season that season. And I think I didn't hunt with Lee after that. I went on my own. I'm sure he hunted out of that gas till it was all gone.
Crazy.
But that was a godsend. But we were getting $900,000 for a polar bear hunt. That was it.
That's not much.
That's not much at all.
But
a Super Cub cost $7,500 brand new. So if you had, at $1,000, you kill 7.5 bears, you got a Super Cub. So today, Super Cubs are $250,000 for new ones.
Yeah.
I think. They're about that, aren't they? Maybe
Sure.
more.
Yeah, depends on.
So a bear hunt's $30,000 now. So it's still 7 bears to a Super Cub. It's the same.
Yeah. But this is a different bear hunt than what they're
Well,
doing now.
yeah.
So you're having to
This
all
is a
the
brown
logistics.
bear hunt I was talking now, because you can't hunt polar bear.
Yeah. Yeah, the logistics of polar bear is way different than a brown bear.
Yeah.
Right? Can
Well,
you talk
not a
about
lot. They're about the same distance from Anchorage, if that's what you
Yeah.
mean.
Well, can you talk about some more about the logistics? Where would you find the bears and stuff?
Like polar bear?
Yeah.
Well, first of all, the bush pilot that started polar bear hunting, Shelvar was one of the first, and Bert Belts, a native guy out of Kotzebue, was one of the first, and a guy named Gilbert something. The first polar bear hunters go out there in J3s and PA11s by themselves, but they never went outside of land, and it was pretty risky.
Mm-hmm.
So somebody finally, I don't know who it was, probably Leon and Nelson Walker,
Mm-hmm.
probably started this teamwork business, having another plane with them.
Mm-hmm.
I can't swear to that, but I think that's really close. And then we came along, guys like Lee Holland and myself, and a few other guides. The second generation of bear hunters. We're not the first. There's Nelson Walker, John Swiss, Leon Schellenberger. Who the hell was Leon's partner? I can't remember who his partner was. And another couple of guys. That was it, 6 of them.
Hmm.
Then all of a sudden there's 10 people up there. 10 partners, 20 people doing it.
Got it.
And it ended up about, the planes that were in Kotzebue, about 20 teams in 1972, the last year they hunted them. But going back to your original question, the first year we hunted out of Point Hope, and we were real apprehensive about getting out of sight of land. When you have no reference to nothing except eyes, it's kind of difficult, and no ADF and no. We finally did get ADF in up there, by the way.
You didn't have the auditory, what was the thing?
The beam, the low frequency beam, they had it. Yeah, but you can't really navigate from Point Hope with a beam that's in Kotzebue. You can only tell when you're on one beam. That's all you can know about it. If that beam kind of intersects where you're at out there.
You don't know how far you are from the beam.
That's right. You don't know.
Yeah, that
There's
is
no
crazy.
DME, distance measuring equipment. No GPS, no LORAN. You don't know how far you're out. Now, let's just take a sample trip. You go out to polar bear hunting, you're venturing out there. First of all, you asked how you find them. You've got to track them down. You can't go out there and hope to see a polar bear. They're white. The ice is white. And your chances of seeing one trotting along is about 1% maybe. But you find tracks. They track everywhere. They walk, they got to make a track. And sometimes they don't make much of a track. That's when the hunting really gets challenging. If it gets hard packed and blown, drift. So they make a track. You run across the track and you learn, Lee taught me how to do this, you learn how big the track is without even landing. You learn that. I don't know how you learn that. I can't explain that, but that's a big track.
Oh, how big the bear is.
It's going to be a big track. Or, that's just a medium-sized track. That might be a medium-sized bear.
That's
and
crazy.
That's a little track. It's a cub. And sometimes the cubs, they're with females. And cubs and females, they'll be feeding along the lead. Polar bear eat out along the leads. Leads being a crack in the ice. It could be frozen over and be that thick. Or it could be that thick. Or it could be wide open water. One day, frozen the next day, that. Or a week later, that.
Yeah.
It's still a lead, and it's identifiable, very identifiable. You come to a lead, you can see it running for miles. You follow those leads looking for bear tracks. They follow the lead. Just imagine the sound, two cubs, she come along today. Tonight, here come a male bear. He came along. Here come a mediocre bear. He came along. All this in 24 hours. Now there's several sets of tracks on that lead. You only want the big one.
Mm-hmm.
If it's big enough. If it's big enough, yep, there's a big one. There's a big track there.
Mm.
Sift it out. Try to keep after it. Now it got mixed up with a whole bunch of tracks. 10 bears will come to something, something dead like a walrus or a whale. Now there's a gang of bears, and now you got to sort your big track out. It's not easy.
And you're getting turned around because you're following this track. So you have no idea where you are if you're not careful.
You finally lose all directions if there's no sun.
Mm.
If you don't have a compass in your airplane, you don't know what direction you're flying. You can't hope to know what direction you're flying. Only thing we do know, drifts are north and south. The leads are northwest and southeast. That you know, and if you see the lead, you assume already that goes northwest and southeast.
That's interesting.
You know that. You learn that. That's one of the things you learn. Those leads parallel the land.
Mm.
You do your hunting close to land, no matter where you're in Russia or Alaska. Mm. You don't hunt out in the middle and find much of productive. Mm. The ice breaks up next to the land. When I say next, within 50 miles of either side. That's where the activity is. 50 miles from this shore, 50 miles from that shore. Out in the middle, it's just a bear traveling, which is rare. They're not feeding there.
So they're going from one coast to the other or something.
So we wouldn't go to Russia to start with. We were kind of apprehensive about it. In the end, we were hunting in Russia exclusively, never on Alaska.
Wow.
Never. We didn't even look down until we flew to the Russian coast in the end. From 1965 through up the rest of the era.
Okay, let me ask you a question. Was that because you guys had just taken them out?
Yeah, well, both. It was because of too much activity. Bears don't like that.
So you're not killing them all. They're running away from you.
They're running up. They're running off from activity.
You're going, let's go to Russia. We like it over there.
Yeah, and we still never killed them all. And they have a right or reason for closing the bear season. I can't see continuing hunting him under the pressure we were doing it. About 300 a year. However, they got panicked about the shortage of bear. There is no shortage of bear now, believe me.
Really?
They're infested with bear now up in that country.
Really?
And I've got a vet that I go to in Anchorage. He goes with Fish and Wildlife almost every year in the tagging program. And they actually weigh those bear with a helicopter.
Mm.
And and Jim Rood, one of my guides, flew that business with a plane for the sport, hauling the gas for the helicopter or the fuel. And Jim would work for me. And so Jim knew what was going on there in that tagging business. This is later in life, like between 72 and 82.
Right.
And I'm jumping around here on dates.
That's fine.
But when Jim knew what was going on, how many bear was out there, And so did this vet. And he weighed a bear. And he was the vet on this bear that they weighed. The largest bear that had ever been weighed. And it was either 17 or 16 or 1,700 pounds. That's really genuine weight, no guessing.
Mm-hmm. What was the biggest one you guys got ever?
Well, the biggest one we ever weighed was the second world record. We weighed that bear. We weighed it with the spring scales on a pipe and cut him up in pieces what we could lift.
And you just weighed all the different pieces?
Everyone, skin and everything, and added. They told us how much they had for body fluids. Can't remember, 6% or something. For body fluids we lost. Mm-hmm. And that bear weighed 1285.
Wow. So this was a big bear.
It's the second world's record bear. It's still in the book. You look at the 1964 book, that bear will be in there. And the first world record's John Swiss and Nelson Walker. Mexicans killed it. Longora was his name. And that was 2 years from the time we killed the second world's record. And we killed them bears within 20 miles of each other on the Russian coast.
Can you talk to me about
2 years apart?
Can you tell me about going to Russia? I mean, was that
every
scary?
day.
What?
Every day we hunted. Of course, you don't hunt every day when you're hunting polar bear. Like you get a hunter in, you kind of allow a week for him. A week is plenty. But sometimes it storms for 4 to 5 days. You might only go out. We generally got a bear every time we went out, by the way. It was pretty rare when we didn't. But we stayed with it until hell
Would you drop
over.
them off?
No.
You're going in, landing, and hanging out.
We're going to land and shoot him.
And so you're staying on the ground for 4 or 5 days? Are you staying on the ground for 4 or 5 days?
We're not staying on the ground over 2 hours.
Okay.
An hour and a half, maybe.
Okay.
It's all over with in an hour and a half.
So you're flying around till you see one, you're landing?
We land up ahead of them. They're on a lead. Anytime you see a bear, he's heading somewhere, doing something. You got to figure that out first of all. What's this guy doing? You've been tracking him already for maybe 20 minutes. You know what he's been doing. Now, if he continues this, that's fine. I'm just going to go 1.5 miles up the lead and land. But the wind's got to be right. Now, occasionally, we weren't too legal doing this. We'd turn them around, but we never chased them around much. But we'd turn them around so that it's going back. If you turn a bear, in other words, you just get on one side of him and circle, he ain't going to like that. He'll turn around and go back. He's going to go on the same lead. He's very rarely going to walk off over John's pasture somewhere. He's just going to stay on. You go down there and land. Now the wind is right for you. You can't land where they can smell you. They won't come to you if you do. That's the first no. You can't let a bear smell you. And they do see better than you think they do. The saying is, all them bears don't have any eyesight. That's not true. I've seen them spot us, just our head only sticking over a pressure ridge for 100 yards away. I've seen them spot us. I've watched it. They can see you. There's no question about that. And they can smell you really good. They've got the best nose in the world. So they're not to be successful, you got to have the wind in your favor and stay out of sight.
So you hide behind a pressure ridge? Yeah.
We're walking away from the airplanes. Got to walk away from the airplane. You can't stand where you landed. They'll see that plane. There'll be something strange to them. They don't like it. So you got to land and hide the planes behind the pressures and then walk maybe 100 yards up that lead and get you a good spot where you can see up the lead. And sometimes the ice is so jumbled you can't see really well. You can see one little area. Now he's going to come through that area. It's only 50 foot wide. You got to shoot him when he gets in there. Otherwise, you can't see him no more until he's gone past us. That happens occasionally.
That's crazy. Did you ever have one charge at you?
Well, we've had a lot of them bears charge you, but that's pretty common.
A polar bear?
It really is, yeah. Polar bears won't eat anything they see.
So you had them hunt you?
If they can't smell you and they see you, they're going to charge you. They're not going to fool around, when they see you. Now, most of them are scared of you.
Yeah.
And we made it that so.
So what's it like to have one running at you?
Well, you get used to it after a while, a little bit.
The first time that happened?
Yeah, first time. I was pretty apprehensive about the first one we killed.
Do you remember that?
Yeah, pretty well. I was with Lee, though. He landed with me. So it's different, The first brown bear I ever killed, though, I was alone by myself with the client. I'd never killed a brown bear before. I'd killed a few polar bear already in my life. I hunted polar bear before I went brown bear hunting. It was next year I went brown bear hunting, and I was pretty impressed by them too. But the polar bear hunting is kind of different. Like I said, it was time to close it, but it wasn't drastic like they were claiming. Oh, we're out of bear. And they're claiming that right now. They said, oh, the ice is melting. These poor bear are going to die. I'm not buying that.
Yeah.
I mean, it might get worse in some areas, but they've got places to go.
Yeah.
And the seal will move too. They got to have the food.
Yeah.
And they're going to go where that food is. And if they're run out of Hudson Bay, which is what they're claiming, that, you know, the ice is melting and they have no place to go back out on the ice. It's just water now instead of ice. And they can't move. I mean, that's what they're going to have to do. They won't stand there and starve to death.
Yeah.
There's a lot of room in the world for them to be yet.
Yeah.
I mean, that whole Russian coast is open. I mean, it's open to bear living. It's wonderful. It's just perfect for them. There's seals everywhere. If the seal population dies, that's what'll get
That's
them.
what's scary. Yeah.
They'll die.
Did you ever get in trouble for going to Russia?
Who with?
It's anyone.
American?
Anyone.
Well, we've been run off Russia a couple times, but
Can you tell me about that?
yeah, it's kind of a brief story, but what real scary
Yeah.
in a way. So we're flying along. This is late in the era of bear hunting. What year was that? That was about second year before it closed. About a year before it closed. I was hunting with a guy he was my cover pilot. We call them cover pilots. They're covering for you, you know. Named Charlie Hunsaker. I'll never forget Charlie. He's a nice guy. And kind of a happy-go-lucky guy.
Yeah.
There's a couple of stories about Charlie that's really interesting. So Charlie and I were flying along one day, and we just saw the Russian coast, a place called Cayman, the Cliffs of Cayman. That's a famous landmark we use over there.
Okay.
You can identify it for miles. So of course, you can only see 20 or 30 miles on the ice pack in the best of days.
Okay.
There's a certain haze there that won't allow you to see any farther.
Wow.
Yeah, you can't see 100 miles or nothing like that. You can't. Now, even from up in the air, you can't see 100 miles.
Interesting.
There's mirages, like the mount, if there's a hill there, it'll be way up in the air. Mirages everywhere in that country.
Crazy.
And people will see things that ain't really there. Lots of mirages. It's like desert mirages, only it's Arctic mirages. It's true.
Crazy.
You can read about that. The Cliffs of Cayman was up in the air that day, and I said, I see the cliffs. We're getting close. We're probably 8 or 10 miles off the coast of Russia. And of course, we try to start hunting about them. We like to be about that far out. And the leads are good there. Around that Russian coast are really good. And now, the reason this Russian coast is so much better than Alaska, there's a place called Wrangel Island up the Russian coast, about 400 miles. It's a breeding ground. It's a huge island, by the way. It's a breeding ground for polar bear. The females all go there to den up and have the young ones.
Interesting.
It's a real polar bear heaven. And those bear all migrate down the coast as far as Diomede Island and back every year. And those same patterns are done every year. And that's their route. Their whole lifestyle spent between Wrangel Island and Diomede Island somewhere. And so that's the bears we're hunting. So we were hunting along there, and I saw an airplane up ahead, and that's something you never see out there. airplane. Well, of course, first thing you think about is Russian because you're in Russia. Wonder who that is. Is that a bear hunter? We're saying that to each other on the radio. Well, where's his partner if that's a bear hunter? Usually there's two planes. And the partner is somewhere near, within a quarter of a mile or a half a mile. You look back and forth, no partner nowhere. But you can plainly see that plane flying. Pretty soon a black smoke came out of that airplane. I mean like coal black smoke, just a big spurt of it. I'm thinking, oh, that's not an airplane, that's a helicopter. And that's black smoke, and that's Russian. We better get out of here. So we took off.
They fired at you? Is that what the black smoke was?
They caught us right away.
Had they fired at you?
Not yet.
Hey guys, we'll get right back to the interview, but first, let's talk about the easiest way that you can support us in making more content like this. So this program is self-funded, meaning if you want to support us, all you have to do is go to my company's website, sportaircraftseats.com. We make aircraft seat upholstery kits that can be installed by an owner or mechanic in just a few minutes with little to no skill. Now, the process that we have created is very easy. You can design and order the seats right on our website. We'll then make them according to your customizations and what seat frames you have, and we'll ship them right to your door. We have instructional videos that show you every step of the installation process and a comfort and fit guarantee. Click the link in the video description or go to sportaircraftseats.com to check us out.
Had they fired at you?
Not yet. So we took off for Alaska, and you gotta know this story. America, of course, is in the height of the Cold War with Russia at that time period. Russia says every piece of water, land, ice, and snow east of the date line is our country. America says, no, we signed the Monroe Doctrine with Russia years and years ago that says a 3-mile limit is Russian area. 3 miles from their shore. Now they're in a fight with each other verbally, and we're in the middle of it. We crossed the date line, we're not legal with Russia. America says, as far as we're concerned, you're in international waters. But Russia says no. And that's all going through the State Department, and they're sending teletype messages to Kotzebue FAA station pertaining to this situation because Russia started complaining to America. Your planes are in our airspace. We got to warn you, they're not safe to be in our airspace. So we're thinking about that too, as we're hightailing it back towards Alaska. They caught us in 15 minutes. Them MI8s are fast helicopters. And they probably do 150, 160 at least, I'm guessing. I rode one later in life, I should know, but so they called us, and of course they can't follow two people. They got to pick one of you. They picked me. And Charlie's off over there about a half a mile. And now we're talking to each other. I'm saying, Charlie, get the hell out of here. Just head north. Just go north. Just get out of here. Get out of the distance. You can't chase us both one time. And you can disappear and he won't find you.
Yeah, if he gets you, he'll just turn and go get him.
Yeah. So he started chasing me. He was trying to get on top of me, and he was really desperately trying to maneuver on top of me, and I'd dart down it. These pressure ridges, by the way, are 80 foot high over there.
Okay.
They're huge. You know, I mean, like 4 times as high as this room, you know. You could get right down in, right alongside of one, your wing almost touching one. And that helicopter, he'd stay up there above it. He never did want to get down that valley with me, luckily for me. Well, I was running down a pressure ridge up ahead of me. I could see a half a mile up there. you know, I was watching that helicopter. I'm trying to maneuver my airplane and dodge out from under him when he'd get over close to me. And it was desperate. I was really sweating. This is going on for like maybe 5 minutes, seemed like an hour. I don't know what I was going to do next when I run out of the pressure ridge.
Yeah.
I didn't have much choice except just to be out in the open. Now he can get right on top of me. And he might wreck me. Probably would with that wash. Big helicopter, boy. But it didn't seem like he'd maneuver quick as the Super Cub. You would think he could just stop and turn, but I don't think them big ones can't quite do that.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I'm guessing. Everything I'm saying now, I'm guessing about.
Right.
So don't think that's the gospel truth that I'd know. I don't know. I'm the last guy to know. So anyway, one thing led to another. It took a couple more minutes. I looked back, he's gone. Just that quick. At one time, he came right alongside of me, and I could see the expression on his face. There were several people in there, by the way. But the one guy in the front, co-pilot or the pilot, might have been the pilot, was looking right over at me, and he was doing like this. And I'm shaking my head no. We could plainly see each other. While I going up that valley, it must have been 5 miles up through there, maybe 4 miles. I reeled out my antenna behind me, HF radio. I don't suppose you know anything about that either, huh?
Probably not.
It's a radio frequency we used to use in the old days before cell phones or satellites that you could communicate long distance. Pretty common people talk 500 miles on HF on the right frequency. We had them in those Super Cubs. I had them all the time I ever owned a Super Cub because that kept you out of trouble a lot. You could talk to somebody. I don't know how many times I've been down with broken gear and stuff and be able to call my house in Anchorage from 100, 200, 300 miles away.
Okay.
And say to my wife, hey, I got broken gear or engine out or whatever.
I did not know about that.
Yeah, HF it's called. It's called high frequency. They're in the bands of 3 to 7 or 8 megahertz.
Okay.
It used to be called megacycles in my old days. Anyway, their HF radio is pretty good. So I could reel the antenna out. What you did is you had to have the right frequency antenna length. So you had a reel up here like a big, huge fly fishing reel.
Yeah.
Just like a fly fishing reel. Like it was about this big around. It was loaded with copper wire. We had 200 feet on ours. Small copper wire about the size of a lead in a pencil. And you could unleash the lock and watch the dial on your radio and let that antenna out. And when it hit the frequency, the needle would come right up to peak. You just lock it. So now you're on frequency.
The wire is just coming out of your airplane.
It's a wire coming out of the back of your airplane.
And it's just flying in the wind.
Yeah, oh yeah, well, it's got a funnel attached to it,
Right.
a little plastic funnel about this big, a regular old funnel.
And
that pulls it out and keeps it, you know, straight without doing this business. You can follow a plane, and we had the bracket right on where that tail light is.
Okay.
A ceramic. And it went through there, and you just reel it up till it hit that bracket. And the reel was right on the left side here up high.
That's so interesting.
And we could talk all over the world with that thing. It was a big, heavy radio, and it weighed 22 pounds. It was real heavy. Of course, radio today they weigh 3 pounds. So anyhow, it was worth its weight, boy. So I called Contribute on HF. That's 300 miles away. Cayman may not be quite 300 miles. Cayman's probably 250. Away from Contribute, no problem. Warren heard me. Warren Thompson worked with radios in Contribute. And I called him, he answered right away, and I said, Warren, I'm being pursued by a Russian helicopter. I'm in international airspace, but he's still after me, and I don't know what's going to happen. I just want to report it so you'll know officially what's going on over here. And he said, well, you know, I'm recording all this, Ron. It's being recorded automatically. We'll have a record of it. But he said, good luck. That's what Warren
Have
told
fun,
me.
old pal.
We worked close with Warren.
Wow.
Warren was the FAA guy all the time I hunted polar bear, all those years, 15, 16 years. He was the same guy. He was always there, and he was always ready to help. And he played a big part in search and rescue in the Arctic. Big part. Nice guy.
So
Just recently died, by the way.
really,
Last year.
so you just to kind of understand what you're telling me, the U.S. and the FAA and whoever was in charge, I guess, wasn't really upset with what you guys were doing as much.
Wasn't upset.
With you guys going over so close to Russia, they weren't as.
Yeah, they redlined that.
What does that mean?
A red teletype came through Kotzebue.
Okay.
That's the way we got communications from Washington, D.C. It was a teletype.
Yeah.
That's kind of like telegram, I think. Now, here come this red teletype one day warning all polar bear hunters, be warned. And they said what I just told you. We don't acknowledge the international date line as Russian airspace east of there. We recognize the Monroe Doctrine, but we're warning you, if you violate Russian airspace, we can't help you. We knew that.
So did they mean the date line if you go over the date line, or did they mean
No,
if you go within 3 miles?
They said, but we don't recognize it. Our treaty don't recognize it. But be warned, you might be confronted by Russian authorities.
So what happened with the helicopter? They just stop pursuing you at one point?
I don't really know, but I know I didn't see it no more. I don't know what happened to him. I looked for him, beat hell. This is like 10 or 15 minutes later now than when he first confronted me. And when I told Charlie to go, 10 minutes, 15 max. So I'm looking around all over for him. I get up off of the pressure ridge and go out on the flat ice, and I'm looking for him again. Made several circles, can't see him anywhere. I can't understand how he could disappear. Where did that? I think he went and landed somewhere or something, because I'd have had to be able to see him. Hell, I saw him from 5 miles away, and I couldn't see anywhere on the horizon where that helicopter went to. I didn't look straight up. When I look back on the whole thing, maybe I should have, but it's pretty hard to do out of a Super Cub. I don't know where he went to.
So did you guys just go back and hunt?
That was the problem. I said, well, Charlie, he's gone. I don't know where he went, but he's gone. Well, how are we going to get together? That was his question. I said, well, you know, there's only one way. What do you know about where you're at right now? I can see Cayman. I said, well, you better go to Cayman. I'll meet you there. So we went back in. He said, I don't like going back into the hornet's nest, Ron. I said, well, he's probably gone somewhere.
Oh my gosh.
So we went back in. We caught a bear that day.
Wow.
We had a late start getting one, but what happened after we got run off from that Russian helicopter, we went and got a bear for that guy. And it was a very risky thing. The goddamn bear charged the hell out of us. One of the very few times that happened. Come really close to getting us. And of course, the hunter finally got it killed. And it scared him to death. And I don't blame him. I was pretty apprehensive too.
Wow.
We were all shooting. So we killed it though before it got to us. Hell, it was probably 40 yards from us. But it was coming badly fast.
Wow.
And so that happened to that hunter that day that we got run off with a helicopter. So Now, 3 days later, his partner's turn to get a bear. I think the weather got a little bad and we couldn't go out for a day or so. Now we're out there with his partner, and we get a bear for him. Partner's riding with me. And the hunter that almost got mauled by a bear, and when we got run off by the helicopter, is with Charlie coming home. And before we take off from the bear, we always check with each other, how's your gas? His might be well lower than mine. You have to start giving him some or taking some from him. If he's in the air a long time longer than you are, you got a surplus. You better give him some of it because you both want to get home. So I said, how's your gas supply? I'll never forget the words he said. I'm good, baby. Let's go home. So away we go. Now the weather gets bad. We're on instruments. I'm at 5,000, he's at 4. And we're flying over the ice pack, 2 little Super Cubs, all by ourselves, no flight plan of any kind on instruments, heading for Kotzebue. But we had ADF. At this point of our game plan, we got ADF, which is a godsend, boy. It pointed at the station. So we're homing right on in on that station, no problem at all. No worry in the world. And the weather's really blowing 25 knots and blowing snow in Kotzebue. We're talking to Kotzebue. It ain't like we're alone out in the world, but it's pretty lonely up there over the ice pack. And dark. It was dark. We hunted so long, getting that bear. The bear got in the water a time or two, and we had all kinds of trouble with that bear. And we were late getting the bear and heading home. Now it's dark, and we'd been talking to Warren. Now, 30 miles, you got to file an instrument flight plan with Kotzebue. You're illegal. See, you're out of all America's control zone when you're off 30 miles off Kotzebue on the ice. You're in international waters.
Yeah.
And in those days, nobody controlled you. Now I think Russia does have control. I think they allow that, working together with Russia. I think you're under a Russian control. It's over in that first big city in Russia. I've heard about it from these air taxis that go over there all the time.
Got it.
So anyway, nobody controlling us, but we have to file with Kotzebue or illegal when you land. And of course, you couldn't land there unknown on instruments. No way. So I called Warren. I said, I knew when we were 30 miles out. I had this gimmick that it's unorthodox, but it worked. My ADF, you know what an ADF is, don't you?
A little bit.
A needle
Yep.
on a dial, a compass dial, and a needle. And it points to the station. No matter which way you are, if that station's over here, it's going to point this way if you're going this way. So my needle, it took me a year to figure this out. I noticed it. Every time I come in to Kotzebue, about the edge of the Kotzebue Sound, 30 miles from Kotzebue, on the ice pack, the sound is smooth. There's no pressure ridges. There's not even hardly a crack in the ice. This is like a skating rink on the sound called Kotzebue Sound. It's 30 miles distance to the ocean.
Got it.
That needle always started doing this on me. It got so sensitive it wouldn't settle down. And I thought, when the hell does that thing do that? It always done it same distance out. I used that after that. Hey, I know where I'm at. I'm 30 miles. We had no DME to tell how far we were away.
Yeah.
But when my needle started doing this, I told Warren this one time. He said, Jesus Christ. He says, is that what you're using for DME? I said, yep. I said, well, I'm 30 miles out, and I give him an estimate. You got to give an estimate then within 2 minutes of when you're going to be there. So I gave him an estimate, 30 miles, Warren. Okay, he gave me a clearance. He won't give you both clearance in the control zone at the same time. You got to come in one at a time. So I told him, I said, well, I'm 30 miles out, and about that time Charlie said, hey, baby, That's what he did when he talked to you on the radio. Crazy. He said, when you're out of gas, you got to go down. I said, Jesus Christ, Charlie, are you out of gas? He said, she just sputtered her last breath. I said, I told you you wanted any, you didn't want any. I thought I had enough. He said, I don't know what to say to him, actually. I can't even remember now what I said, but it seemed like I said, well, I can't help you. I'm going to let you know when I get in over the station, and I'll know how many miles you're out here on the sand. I know you're on the sand, Charlie, because I know my needle started quivering quite a bit ago, a few minutes ago. I said, I don't think you're over 15 miles out. He said, well, I'm just never done this before. He said, I'm just going to make an instrument approach and let it happen. He said, I don't instrument approach to the ice pack? Yeah, well, you got to visualize, here you are, pitch black dark over the ice pack. Even though I think he's inside the sound, which is smooth ice, he's going to be landing, he might hit something head on for all he knows. He ain't going to be able to see. It's blowing 25 knots, and that obscures the ice pack. It blows that snow down there on the last 100 feet of it, and you can't see nothing once you get to 100 feet off the ice. And so that's what he was facing. I knew how bad that wind was because Warren's reporting 25 knots, and if he had 25 knots, I had 25 knots. There's no question about it. And we're not that far out. Pretty soon he said, and I called him at 3,000 and 2,000, and he's reporting where he was. Pretty soon, I'm down, flat and level, not a blemish in the ice. And I told him, I said, so I just went over the station. I was 8 minutes getting there from the time I left you. I said, you can't be over 8 miles out. Hell, you weren't doing over 60 ground speed. I said, I'm going to send the snow machines out there to get you. I said, they'll be able to find you. You just turn the radios off and save the batteries and wait until they've had time to get out there before you turn it back on, and let's see if they can find you. And I landed, I went out and made an instrument approach and landed on the runway. We normally land on the ice strip right in front of town. It's just a little place they've cleared the ice off on the ocean. But you have to make an instrument approach. It was so bad I couldn't even peel off of the approach and land on the ice strip. I just went ahead and landed on the runway. But there's snow and ice on the runway for skis.
Got it.
Then I got out, and everybody in town knew about it already. And let me tell you what really happened here. So when we're talking on the radio back and forth, now everybody's on the same frequency, the FAA frequency. So Warren's talking, the FAA guy out of Wisconsin Control, he's talking. He's saying to me when I was out there about 30 miles, he said, there's an Alaska Airlines sitting on the ramp here. They need to go, and we got to have an estimate from you of when you're going to ask to be here. I told him, I said, well, I think I'm about 20 minutes out, Warren, because the needle started quivering about 10 minutes ago. He said, well, they're not due to go for 30 minutes. They just give me their flight plan. So I said, that's good. I can get there before they take off. So while I'm flying in, and before I landed at Constable Airport, that pilot gets on the air, Alaska Airlines. He's sitting in the cockpit. He's hearing all this stuff. And he said, who was that out there on that ice pack? I said, Charlie Hunsaker. He said, that's my roommate. Well, I knew his roommate worked for Alaska, but I didn't have no idea he was in that plane. I said, well, your roommate's down out on the ice. He's only 8 miles out there. I think we're going to go rescue him with snow machines. And in the meantime, I went ahead and landed. And that guy said, well, we're going to take off and go out there and see if we can circle over him so the snow machines will know where he's at. I thought, what? You're going to take Alaska Airlines out there full of people?
Yeah.
Yep. That's what they did. And he asked the crew, or the passenger, he says, folks, my partner's out there on the ice pack about 8 miles, and we'd like to go out there and circle that plane. And until the snow machines rescue them and get them back to town. And everybody started clapping. That's what the guy told me later. And so that was approved, very illegal.
Yeah.
And so they did. They went out there, and of course, he's talking now to Charlie on the ground, and Charlie's telling him he can see straight up.
Mm-hmm.
He's telling him when he goes over him, he says, "You just went over me." Now he starts circling that plane, and the snow machines can see him up there too. And it was pretty quick. They rescued them. They was out there. They drive them machines 60 miles an hour up there in the Arctic, you know. They don't even slow down, boy, when they go across. They drive dangerously with them things.
That's crazy.
Hell, they do 80 and 90 sometimes. But 60's common.
Yeah.
So there was 5 machines went out there, all within sight of each other. They just did a grid. They went right out there. Got them. Hell, it's back in town in an hour. You know, he didn't wreck the plane, by the way. He landed the plane on the ice pack, got rescued, and all within an hour.
That's so crazy.
Yeah, it was pretty hell of a
So this client got what he paid for.
That's a true story, too.
That client got what he paid for. He had the maximum adventure he could have had.
Wow. I never did find out if there was any repercussions about that Alaska airline plane doing that. That was real unorthodox.
What kind of a plane was it?
737.
737? Oh.
Yeah, it might have been a 720. It was a 727, not a 37.
Why don't we talk a little bit about like float flying in the out in where were you? King Salmon?
Alaska Rainbow Lodge.
So Adam told me that you had on your screensaver like all these pictures of wrecked airplanes, and you had a story for each one of them.
Yeah.
Do you have one in mind that you could share with me? What airplanes have you wrecked?
Super Cubs mostly.
Okay. Float planes or wheel planes?
Wheel.
Skis?
Never worked. Yeah, I wrecked one on skis once. Pretty bad. Not real bad, but kind of a nice story. You want to hear it?
Sure.
Wolf hunting.
Yeah.
In the Arctic. With Bill Sims.
Okay.
And Bill's one of the best trackers you ever came across for wolves. He can track a wolf across the cement. We're out one day and we're going up in the DeLong Mountains, that's east of Kotzebue. We come across this set of wolf tracks, looked like about 6 or 7 wolves. We came on them. And there's one wolf chasing a caribou. I thought, here I am 100 feet over that wolf, and it ain't giving up that caribou. It's still chasing it. So I told Bill on the radio, I said, come over here and watch this. I think this wolf's going to catch this caribou. And he came over here, and sure enough, when they went, that caribou went down in a gully about as deep as this room and out again, kind of steep banks. And when that caribou started up at the other side, that wolf made a jump from this side. It was pretty narrow on the bottom, and grabbed a hold of the hind end of that caribou. And that caribou just struggled up and got up on the level. That wolf was still hanging on, boy. And all of a sudden, that wolf let go of that hind quarter and grabbed that caribou right here on the neck, just as quick as a flash. And then, boy, it was all over within 5 minutes.
Yeah.
So my client says, now that's something. I want to kill that wolf. I want that trophy. I said, okay. So we take out after that wolf. And that guy couldn't hit the wolf. We had to land and shoot then. That was up in the days when no longer shoot it out of a plane.
Got it.
You had to land and shoot the rifle. So I landed right behind that wolf. Damn near run over him, but you can't hardly run over one. They're going to dodge you. And by the time that hunter got out, got the damn gun up, and started shooting, the wolf was 100 yards away, of course. And he couldn't hit him. And when the wolf got 200 yards, I said, stop shooting. So he stopped, and we got back in the plane. I said, and his wife's in the other plane. It's a man and wife team. And she's critical of him on the radio. And that made it worse.
Oh, my God.
And she's she's a hunter too, and she's screaming and hollering, he can't shoot. And, what's the matter with you, Bill? That was his name too, was Bill. So I said, we're getting the plane, we're going to go track it down, we'll get another whack at it. So we track the wolf down, we land on it, and now the wolf's only about 75 yards. I tried to run right over that wolf. By the time the guy got up, the wolf's 75 yards. And the wolf stopped, and the guy ain't quite ready yet. He's still fumbling with the gun. And all of a sudden, that wolf turned around and started for the plane. Now, he's only 75 yards away. I said, get your ass back in the plane. That wolf's coming. He was coming like a panther, boy, fast. So the guy jumps in the plane, and the wolf runs back, and he comes up to the plane, and their snowshoes are on the wings yet. He jumps up there and grabs them snowshoes and just does this business to them. And then turns around and walks off.
Walks off?
Turns around and walks away. And as soon as that wolf got 50 yards, I said, get out and shoot that wolf. I'm really tired of this. He did. He got out and finally killed it. It was a 65-pound female wolf. Killed that caribou all by herself, no help. And it was a full-grown female caribou. And there's one more that was with Bill.
So this was supposed to be about the airplane getting wrecked.
Huh?
You were going to tell me about
It's coming.
Okay.
Bill and I went. We had these hunters. Let's see, who did we have that day? We had 2 guys that day. So we're back in the Bering Mountains, quite a long hills, big hills. And we found this pack of wolves. It was about, there was 8 or 9 of them. It was a big pack, a whole family. And that night, there was snow on the ground about that deep, old snow, semi-hard. It's not packed hard, but it's semi. And on top of it, last night, it snowed 8 or 10 inches on top of that old snow. So it was right on this ridge. And at that time, I was going to plop right down on that wolf and jump out and shoot. It's the old rifle deal. I got right behind him, and I was just touching down, and all of a sudden, my ski hit something, and it sounds like I'm in a gravel crusher when the plane settled. I'd landed in a rock pile and didn't know it. That new snow had covered them rocks. They were probably just sticking up like this far through the old snow, and there were big rocks, underneath that snow. Like probably rocks this big around, and the tops was sticking above but they were covered with that fresh snow from last night. Oh man, it just tore me up. It ripped both gears right off of the airplane, and it sat there on its belly, on the belly tank. Both gears flopped out. It's just sprawled out. And I called Bill. Hey, I got trouble up here on top of the ridge. Just wrecked my airplane. I landed in a rock pile. He says, well, as soon as I get this wolf killed, I'll be up there. He said, just hang on a little bit. I said, yeah, well, I ain't got much choice. So pretty soon he called and he said, well, we both got trouble, Ron. I just broke a gear on my plane landing on this wolf.
No.
I said, are you kidding? I said, I almost started laughing, I said, are you kidding me? And we talked a little bit, and I said, better check and see what all you really got broke, Bill. Let's see if we can't get these things going, one of them going. He said, I need a left ski. He said, it broke the ski. I looked at my plane. I said, I've got a good left ski. The right ski on my plane is broke.
No way.
And be damned if we didn't take our ski off. He said, well, bring it down here and we'll go home. So neither one of us got the wolf, by the way.
Yeah.
Neither one of us got wolf. So I took that ski off of the axle. We always carry a toolbox in an airplane. Go nowhere without a toolbox.
Yeah.
That's an important item if you're going to bush fly. So I took the ski off of my plane, It was still attached to the axles. The gear was flopped out like this under the wings. And I pulled it off down there. He was a mile away, and there was fresh snow that deep. And we had to put snowshoes on. I carried 2 pair on the planes when we were wolf hunting, though. So each of us he didn't know how to walk on snowshoes, and that was a challenge, getting him going down through there. And so we carried that, we put our stuff on, I took my tools. We carried it all, I drug it on that ski. You know, it's pretty easy. Anything we had to carry with us.
Just put it on the ski.
We finally got down there and put that ski on. We all 4 went home, Bill's plane.
2 loads, 1 load?
No, we all 4 humped in that Super Cub. I've had 5 of them Super Cubs before.
Where do you guys, how do you get in?
Well, the first guy sits with his feet back in there where that end is. Okay? And he's back. And he's really cramped.
Facing that way. Facing back.
Yeah, he's facing the tail.
Got it.
The second guy sits next to him facing the front. That guy spreads his leg, and the third guy's in between his legs and the seat. It's pretty simple. It's just uncomfortable.
Do you guys draw straws? How do you
Well, everyone who owns an airplane gets a run in front.
And then you were behind,
Yeah.
and then the clients are in the back.
I'm the guy behind. Well, it's his plane that we got fixed.
Yeah.
He gets to fly it. I wouldn't fly his plane.
That is actually crazy to think. What are you guys, 200 pounds each or something?
Yeah, most of them hunters are more than that, but
Yeah.
yeah, load's not a factor in those Super Cubs. Well, if you only got 500 feet, you got a problem.
Right.
But you better not be in a short place like that trying to haul that kind of a load. Any landing field you land on, you got to judge your weight that you're going to get out of there with. You can't avoid that. I mean, there's just no way you're going to take off with a grossed out Super Cub, overgrossed on a short field. I mean, these guys that's doing these short field landings and takeoffs, they're empty, for God's sake.
Empty.
They should be doing them grossed out. It'd be a different story. I mean, the empty Super Cub is amazingly short. It can land in.
I got a question for you. When you're hunting a wolf like that, or a polar bear, or whatever, and you're going to land quick, get out of the plane and everything, what I'm used to at my level is you check out a strip. You got to drag it 3 times.
No,
so how do you do that? How do you do that?
You learn that by wrecking your plane. That's how you learn that.
Yeah. So
you wreck your plane a few times, or just minor little wrecks, like you break a bungee or something, and safety cables keep it from hitting the strut, the tire. It's safe.
Yeah.
Simple deal. Put a little rope on it or whatever you got. You have no shock. You just got it pulled up tight.
Yeah.
You get out of there and learn the lesson.
So what's the lesson that you've learned at that point?
Well, you might have hit something that, swales. That's bad. Anytime you got swales, it's bad.
Yeah.
Downhill slopes, having to throw the brakes on bad and nosing your airplane up, that's bad. This kind of business, you're landing, it's level or just slightly uphill, and then it gets to the top, and then it goes downhill for a couple hundred feet. Those are bad places. They wreck your plane. You're liable to.
Because if you don't time it right, you're going to come over the top too slow to fly.
But we'll flop an airplane down in 2 minutes after I see a bear. If you're over 2 minutes, the bear's gone anyhow.
So you're just, at this point...
Well, I learned by wrecking my plane.
Yeah. And you're good at judging quickly.
Oh, yeah. I can tell you the color of the ground if it's wet or dry. Now, that's one thing you got to be able to do. I don't know if you've noticed it, but do you ever notice when you get in a little higher places, the ground changes color, and down in green places? Bad stuff, that green stuff. Don't land in that. You'll nose up and turn on your back. It's soft.
Yeah.
Hard ground is the secret.
Yep.
To land and for skis, don't land in a rock pile. That's the first rule.
How would you have known that there were rocks under there?
You wouldn't know. That's just one of those accidents that any pilot would have made that mistake.
And that's the risk.
Perfect ridge. It was perfect. It had a little slope to it.
That's the risk you're taking doing that kind of an operation.
Well, we wrecked our planes by not being able to research the landing area or landing in places that shouldn't have been even tried to start with.
Right.
That's where you wreck your planes. Or operating in too much wind, crosswind, or downwind. You just don't fool with that. One thing about it, if it's only 2 miles an hour, don't land downwind. Don't try to take off downwind. That's dynamite, downwind stuff. You can't get off the ground. It just won't fly. Even though you got to add only 5 miles to that airspeed, that 5 miles is almost impossible to get before your 500 foot's gone.
Yeah.
I'm talking about short runways now, not good runways.
Right. I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
Have you ever had an experience where you're flying in bad weather and you really scared?
Oh, God. That's what probably the worst part of that career.
What can you share one experience like that with me?
I circled a tree once for 2 hours.
One tree?
One tree.
What does that mean?
In Lake Clark Pass.
You couldn't see anything else
I
except
couldn't
for a
see
tree?
anything else.
How tight of a turn were you in?
There's a big cottonwood, a huge one. Every time I go by that since then, I look at that tree and think, oh, man, I had a bad experience there.
But the tree saved you, though. It's so big, right?
And that was one time I was kind of scared.
How do you get yourself in that situation?
Well, we're coming back from the fishing lodge now. This is not too long ago. I mean, my wife and I, Sharon. So we're coming through Lake Clark Pass. The weather's really bad, and it's windier than get out. I mean, like really windy. It's turbulent. It's knocking you out of the sky. And we're going so slow, I finally just gave up at about not quite the center of Lake Clark Pass, coming east towards Anchorage.
Yep.
Turn around, go back to Lake Clark, or Iliamna. Sleep in the fuel shack. Nothing around. Wind's blowing. I had to land sideways. I landed in the parking lot and taxied right up to the fuel shack, right beside the FAA building, and tied to the banister on the building.
What are you in? What kind of airplane?
Super Cub.
Okay.
So we stayed the night in the fuel shack. We got up the next morning, and we were gassed up, and we made another stab at it. And we got through Lake Clark Pass and you familiar with that place? We got over, what the hell's the name of that damn little lake there, east entrance? Anyhow, it's the entrance.
Yeah.
Right at the entrance. We got right there.
This is what is it called? The Narrows? This is past?
Oh, we was past that. We was out almost to the beach.
Got it.
So we're in the creek that runs down to the ocean. They're coming out of Lake Clark Pass. We're in that river. And that don't go where I'm thinking I want to go towards Anchorage more. It comes out down a little bit farther south from where I want to go. There's another creek over next to that ridge. There's a ridge that runs out towards the ocean, right out of Lake Clark Pass on the east entrance. Long ridge. I'm trying to get around that ridge. It's real low ceiling, it's snowing. And so I got on this little creek, and I know that little creek runs down to the beach, but I know before it gets to the beach, there's a road going across that creek. It goes from an oil dispensary thing to an airport, a little airport out there on West Orleans. You know where that airport is, don't you? I'm shooting for that airport because the weather's really getting bad. I'm on wheels, and there's lots of snow on the ground, about this much, everywhere. So it's out of the question trying to land on gravel bar.
Yeah.
So I'll start down this little creek, and the visibility just goes down to where I couldn't see nothing. I could see immediately down out of the window the creek, but nothing. Straight ahead, you just dart up, look ahead, melt to white. White. just the bushes on the creek is all I can see. Barely enough visibility to actually turn around on the creek. Just barely. Actually, you're half blind turning around, half of the turn. So I was going down that creek and I got blinded out and I made the turn. I was half blind on half of the turn, but I got the creek coming back. And I see this big tree. Huge, big cottonwood tree. Goddamn thing must be this big around, at the butt. I started circling that tree. I could stay just a few feet away from it, 100 feet, 200 feet, and be able to make that circle around that tree. I circled that tree till I was blue in the face, and I said, God, we just got to get somewhere. We can't stay here. And of course, try that creek, and every time I'd try it, I'd run out of visibility completely, and I'd turn around. Half of the turn was on blind. Back I'd go. I went back to that tree 3 times.
Jeez.
That
is incredible.
It was really, really scary. And I kept thinking, how'd I get into this goddamn mess to start with? God damn it, I wish I was back in that fuel shack at LAM. And so down the creek, and I finally told Sharon, I says, get the sleeping bag out of the seat back. She's sitting on a sleeping bag in the butt, and she's leaning against one in the backrest and in the cushion.
Yeah.
In my Super Cubs, that's what you carried. I said, I want you to put it around your waist and tighten that seat belt on it when I tell you to. I just want you to get prepared. She said, Ron, you're scaring me. I said, yeah, I know. But I said, we might land in that snow out here in this swamp. And I know if we do, at least it's going to happen. So we're going to go on our nose or on our back. I said, neither one of them will hurt us. And there's snow on the ground. Fire is very unlikely. But you're going to be upside down. And if you don't do that sleeping bag thing, you might get seatbelt injury or you might get hurt. And I want you to put the other one on your head when we go to land. I said, but I'm going to try it one more time down the creek. So I went down the creek and I still easing along. I hadn't run into the complete whiteout. I was still able to see enough far ahead of me that I knew the creek was still there. No turns or anything. I didn't think there was any turns in it anyhow. Sharp turns,
Yeah.
I knew that road went across it down there. I knew I'd spot that road because when they make them roads, bushes grow up beside those roads and plowing up that ground. It's always that way. The bushes is what save your life when you're bush flying. That's what they call it. Bushes, you got to follow bushes, especially in the Arctic. You got to have the bushes. Otherwise, you can't hold a horizon. You'd have to go on instruments. So, snowing like it was, the instrument was out of questions. You go on the instruments, you're going to get iced up right away. That's where a lot of guys make their mistake. They get themselves in a position they can't get out of course. And then they go on the instruments, and then they can't get out of that because it's too tough conditions. Ice, snow, ice. Hell, I bet 1,000 feet it was freezing good.
Yeah.
Anyway, going through my head, I'm scared, of course. This is late in life, and I'm scared. I've been through dozens of those kind of situations, similar, but not the same. I creep on down that creek, and I hit that road, and I went past it and shot over it before I could make the turn. Now I'm out there again, and I have to make a blind turn. So I said, I got to do this. So I made an instrument turn, and I came back and hit that road. And followed that road up towards the airport. It can't be over a mile from that creek. I know that from being down there before. A lot of these things that save your life in bush flying has been there and done that before, knowing the country too.
Yeah.
So I get up to the airport. It's got snow all over it. Now it's better to wreck on the airport than it is out in that swamp. I no more than hit that airport, and I see the snow all over. I look up ahead, and there's a road grader grading. He's grading the other way, though. He's come in from the intersection at the middle of that airport and starts grading that way. And he only had a trail about 500 feet behind him. It was clear. I landed right in that trail and scared the guy to death. I taxied right up to him. He looks back and he does like this. He jumped out of that road grader and said, "You can't land here. This is a private airport." I said, "I'm sorry, but this is an emergency. I'm definitely not going to take off." They helped me out and fed me, and we're friendly after we finally told them the situation.
Wow.
I said, "Yeah, I made pilot error. I shouldn't have been here. I shouldn't have started. I should have stayed in Iliamna. But that's history. I'm here, and I got to make the best out of it." They said, "Well, come on down to the office in the cafeteria," and we had coffee with them, and the snowstorm went by. They go by in cells, most of the time, them snowstorms. It was an intense snowstorm that we got into. Now it's gone. Visibility is up 3 to 4 miles. So we started up the beach towards Anchorage, got up about the power line. Damned if I didn't hit the worst damn snowstorm again. Now that I have the power line, I know exactly where I'm going on that. I come to the power line, I called them for a special to get over here. They gave me a special, and I came down and landed, and I said, "That's enough for today."
Jeez. That's enough for any day.
Yeah. She got sick too.
Man.
All that circling. That's it.
So let me ask you a couple questions, and then we'll wrap it up. One is, let's say I'm 20 years old.
Yeah.
And I want to be a bush pilot.
What do you do? Huh?
What do I do?
Well, you got to learn to fly first.
Yeah.
Go to a proper flying school. Then find a mentor that is a bush pilot and stick to him like glue until you learn. And that's the best way if you want to be a bush pilot.
And that's what you did with...
yeah, and that's what everybody does that knows anything. They try to find a mentor.
Yeah. For a guy like me, I have no plan to ever be a real bush pilot and fly for a living.
Who are you going to fly for? It's hard to fly for a living with a bush pilot. Yeah, your own business.
Well,
fine.
I don't want to fly in my own business. I don't want to do it professionally. I don't want to do it for money. I just want to fly for fun. What advice do you have for someone like that?
I had a job all the time I was learning.
Yep.
I just didn't stay on that job full time.
Yeah.
I went and did the flying. But see, you've got a business going here I didn't have. My business was flying.
Yeah.
So you said you didn't want to do that. So you're going to have to do it in your spare time. And that's probably not going to happen too easily.
Yeah.
You're not going to get enough experience. You're going to always be wondering if that's the right thing to do because you haven't got the experience.
And I've had people tell me
the only way you can get the damn experience is go out and do it.
Yeah.
So you'll have to take the time out of your life, out of your upholstery business to go take that. Is that your plane?
Yeah.
Take that plane and get up there in Friday Creek and Metal Creek and learn how to land on 400 feet. So you're going to have to learn to land on different places and how to identify the runway. That seems to be your biggest trouble right now. Can I land here? Well, that takes experience to do that. And only one thing will do that is to go out there and do it. And challenging places. Just pick a challenging place that hopefully you don't wreck your airplane and try to get on it.
Yeah.
Steep hill. That's one thing. Learn how to identify ground that you don't know if it's a swamp or hard ground. That's number 2. If you can handle those 2 things, you can probably land anywhere.
How do you learn to identify ground? You land somewhere and walk around and look at the ground and then look up at it from the sky? What do you do?
You can't learn nothing on the ground very well.
So how do you do that?
There.
You just look at it, drag your tires on it?
You look at lots of them. And you finally end up picking one, and you land on it.
Mhm.
Now you know. You've either screwed up your airplane. See, you're too afraid of wrecking your airplanes, what I can see
I
in the
probably
back of
am.
your mind.
That's very true.
You know, I never was afraid of that. That didn't enter my mind. One time I was going to kill this grizzly bear, and the guy was riding with me.
Mm.
And I said, boy, that's impossible to land down there. I said, I don't think I can land there. He says, how much does this plane cost, Ron? And I told him. He says, I'll buy you a new one if you'll land there. So I landed, and I didn't wreck my plane. I learned something that
That's
day.
really cool. What'd you learn?
I learned that you can land on that stuff that don't look landable, but it is.
That's incredible. That's really
It wasn't as bad as I thought it was.
cool. Yeah.
Yeah,
lesson
you got
on
every little thing. Like you do something, and next time something comes up, oh, I remember doing that 10 years ago. It didn't work out too well.
Mhm.
I ain't doing that again.
Yeah.
You know, that's experience, and you ain't going to get that overnight.
See, I'm 40 years old.
Yeah,
So when I started learning to fly, I was 36, 37.
yeah,
I think I was at the age where I don't want to make mistakes and I'm more cautious.
yeah. You wasn't there
And
yet.
now I have little kids. And so
Yeah,
it's like
that's true.
I don't take risks like that as much.
Hmm.
But
I was 28, I think. Let's see, I'm 56. It'd be 30. Yeah. 58 would be 30 years old. I was 28
when you what?
when I learned to fly.
Wow.
Yeah. I remember the first day I flew in a plane on an introductory flight as taking lessons right here on Merle Field.
Mhm.
And the guy took me up in one of those champs.
Mhm.
And I kind of scared of the plane falling, you know, for no reason out of the air.
Mhm.
Just bothered me a little. I guess that's what a lot of people think the first time
That
they
it's
ride
going
in
to
a
fall,
plane.
just
Yeah.
going to come plummeting out of the air.
It was an unusual foreign feeling
Yep.
to be sitting up there in the air with nothing under you but the seat of that airplane.
Were you a natural?
A natural?
Yeah, at flying.
Yeah, I don't know. It seemed like things came hard for me. You had to beat it into my head, dude. I wasn't real good at it to start with.
That's got to be encouraging for someone listening that's
Yeah.
starting out.
The only thing is, it didn't bother me to take a chance
Yeah.
at all. The thought never ever run through my mind that I was going to get hurt in that airplane.
That's crazy.
I didn't care if I wrecked it a little bit, except financial wise. I hated that. Here's what I consider a wreck with me. It's when you tear the gear off, landing and taking off. I had a takeoff accident one time out of a cinder blow on the Alaska Peninsula. It was about 400 foot round. There was no long ways to it. It was round. So you just kind of had to see which way that's barely, you had to wet your finger and see where the wind was coming from. It might have been a little help. That's the direction you had to go, you know.
Yeah.
And so I'd been working, and it's back in the days when I had them 4-inch brake bands that worked like old car brakes. Remember them?
Okay.
It wasn't like this. It was inside of a brake
Was it
drum.
drum?
Terrible brakes. And they were hanging up. I didn't have no brakes. They weren't any good anyhow. I kept trying to tighten them up so they'd work better, so I could stop faster. I think I got them. I remember the night vividly. And I know I got them too tight. And of course, taking off from the lodge empty, the Wildman Lake down on Peninsula. I was going across the mountains on the Pacific side, and there was a cinder blow over there about 400 foot round that I had a guide and a bear hunter and a dead bear skin there waiting for me to pick them up. It was about 6 o'clock at night. I was going over to get them. And I just worked on them brakes at the lodge. I went over there and landed, loaded up, threw the bearskin in, the guide got in the baggage, the hunter sit on the bearskin. And I started out down through that 400-foot runway. The tail didn't come up, of course. And if that tail don't come up, you ain't gonna fly.
Mm.
And it was real bad about coming up. And I thought, no. And I shut her down. And I thought, yeah, maybe I'll just go back and make that circle and be going 10 miles an hour, hopefully, when I turn right. I did that, and I thought it was going pretty good. The tail came up, it was getting light, and there was alders about 15 foot high at the end of it, all the way around the cinder blow.
Oh my
There was
gosh.
no clearing.
So funny. Man.
God dang it. I got airborne, and that alder was about 15 foot high, and I hit one about that big around. It was right on the wingtip, 1 foot from the end of the wing. And it cartwheeled me. It just went like that airplane. There wasn't nothing left of that plane when it got through turning over. It was completely destroyed. Both wings, fuselage, everything. We didn't get a scratch, but I wrecked my plane. Those brakes were dragging. My fault, but it was still mechanical. But most of those mechanicals are the pilot's fault. They don't take care of that mechanical problem.
Yeah, right.
Didn't drain the gas, didn't check for water. The brakes were dragging. You name it. One thing after another.
Still pilot error.
Still pilot error, yep. Tail wheel, all bent out of shape, and damn things sitting like this and turning the right direction in the tundra and beating it up, you know, and it's bouncing like that when you're trying to turn it around. Heavy load. Lazy, too lazy to get out and do it by hand.
Yep.
All pilot errors.
I super appreciate you coming and doing
Yeah.
this. What's going to happen is people are going to say, you know what they're going to say is, you never.
You know, this is to be continued. Is that the way you do
What
it?
I'm saying is they're going to say, you didn't ask him about this story, and that story is the best story. And so it's going to have to happen. And then I'll write them all down, and next time I'll ask you.
All right, you made it to the end of the episode. That is an accomplishment. I really appreciate it. Obviously, you like this content. We're constantly shooting new episodes, and we have a lot of episodes in the can that we'll be posting soon. So subscribe, ring the bell, and that'll give you a notification when we post new episodes. In the meantime, like this content, comment on it, let us know what you think. And if you want to support our channel, go to sportaircraftseats.com and get seats for your airplane. We really appreciate it. Thank you.